What's up, everybody? It's Andrew Clark, host of the Bayview Podcast. And today I'm joined by three good friends, Britton, Bishop, Garrett Kahrs, and Tre Giles. And I'll introduce you, let them take a moment here in a second to introduce themselves. But today our hope with this podcast is the four of us are together. It's kind of like an accountability group. So we just want to talk through the ins and outs of what that looks like, the why, the how we're doing it even. And just really talk about the importance of it and what we're kind of gleaning and learning and how we've been growing through it. And so with that first, Britton, what's up?
Yeah, what's up? Name's Britton Bishop. I'm one of the pastors at the Tabernacle. Bayview fam. I think we're pretty familiar with each other. If you've checked out our podcast, Andrew and Pastor Chris have both been on there. So yeah, live in Manistee, Michigan. Been doing ministry up here for around 4 years. Andrew and I have been boys ever since the most awkward Zoom call in my whole entire life.
Let's go.
Shout out to the awkward dudes that were on there with us. No, you can tell though in that saying, I was like, I'll be friends with this guy because he doesn't own that many board games. And so did not mean to roast inadvertently the person that I'm talking about. But yeah, so yeah.
No, we love
the
Tab fam. And yeah, Pastor Chris and I have been on the Tab podcast. That's what it's called. They can find that. And so
Man Up coming soon next spring. Make sure you sign up, man.
We do a lot of hey, shout out. We do a lot of ministry with you guys. We can't with them, but no, glad you're here. Then Garrett Kahrs.
Yeah.
How are you?
I'm doing well, all the way from Hays, Kansas, which nobody knows where that is. So don't even Google it. I don't even know if it'll show up. You know, true story, if you Google my address, you'll see me weed whipping my front yard on Google Street View. Is that the craziest thing ever?
Promise?
I promise you.
You call it weed whipping, which is insane to me.
I'm sorry, bro. Anyways, yeah, so glad to eat, glad to put myself under that train that's going to happen now for forever making jokes for me, but glad to be here again on the podcast.
Yeah, Garrett was our first guest.
Yes.
And
the worst for best, the worst for first.
Set a baseline.
Good.
Yeah.
So good.
Mediocre.
And we said Hays, Kansas is
the middle of nowhere, but everybody there says it's the middle of everywhere.
Yeah.
So
weird flex.
Yeah. No, it's not a flex. There's no flexing. No flexing that happens there. So
sweet. And then
Kansas.
Unless you love it.
Who would live there?
Yeah. Just three of us.
Yeah, not you three.
No.
And then to my right is Tre Giles.
I'm the only one that stayed.
Gotta get out, dog.
To my right, Tre Giles. What's going on?
Oh man, yeah. What's up, y'all? I'm Tre, and man, I'm out here from Portland, Oregon. So I came here from the West Coast. I ain't gonna even lie to you, man. I'm at about 2 hours of sleep. Caught a red eye on accident, and so we gonna see how this goes. I'm a little bit unhinged, but you know, as my first act of love towards the Bayview fam, I took off my The Ohio State University shirt. But just so all y'all know where I'm at, that's where I'm at. OH.
How did you even become an Ohio State fan?
You know, I didn't grow up knowing any of my family, but we can get into the trauma later. and just to keep it short, now that we're here, we're going deep on the pod. For the people watching, I'm light skinned, which means that I'm half black and half white, and half of my family lives in Ohio. It's the white side, and they all love Ohio State, and I had no way to connect with them because they're from a different context than me. So yeah, man, went for the Buckeyes as a way to tie the family together. There's my family history, baby. You're welcome.
Deep dive.
Thank you, Tre. Real quick, Tre, what church are you a part of? What?
Oh, thank you.
He's like, let's redeem this.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, so out in Portland, Oregon, I work at a church called Bridgetown, and out there I'm the pastor of Justice and Mercy.
Cool. Sweet. You flew the furthest, and so we're glad you literally got here this morning, and we're glad you're here. Fed you some Slabtown, and
man, the burger was slapping. Let's get it.
So good. So, but no, the four of us for about a year now have been doing more or less an accountability group. We've used the term brotherhood and things like that, and it really came about from Britton and Tre kind of approached us, and you guys can kind of share where this kind of came from, this idea, because it's not just like a couple buddies. Like the four of us were in ministry, believe it or not, that kind of stuff, right? But there was this need, or maybe like I know for sure a desire, but life can tend to fall into like the lonely category. Maybe that's something. And but either way, you guys kind of approach this idea of doing life together, but doing it at a deeper level. So maybe Britton, like where did that come from? What was that?
Yeah, I think like Trey and I, we were all together in Hayes, Kansas, went to college there, did some ministry there together for a minute. And like as people go and as time goes on and you get married and you move to new places and all this stuff, like there are people that like you knew and there are people that you know. And I think like as the years went on, by like all factors involved, Trey and I like shouldn't have still been homies, other than the fact of like there was something there of like, man, like this guy cares about me and I care about this guy, like in a very like brotherhood, like just we'd been through some stuff together, and G was very similar as well. Like just those guys that when you see them, it's like you're just back, like it's family.
Yeah.
And we were just talking about that one day because as you guys know, like in ministry especially, like you're somewhere and like you're known, but like you're not known. Like it's different and it's hard to explain to people, but there's that aspect of like as you come and as you go, like your community changes and it shifts and there's all kinds of stuff. But like having a group of individuals that are just there, that are consistent, that know you, like that you've been to like those deep trenches with. And I think just that desire to see that be something that is forever and not just temporary as you're in a new place and you constantly have to reset. And so we were just talking about that and I was like, man, why don't we do something like that? And I believe there were some guys that Trey knew or knows that he is in community with right now that were doing something similar, and he's like, so why don't we just do it? Yeah. And we did, believe it or not. So like you kind of had the vision for the thing, and I was like, well, yeah, I'm in. So it was kind of the two of us, and then we just kind of picked our favorite people to join us.
Yeah, for sure. And I think something that makes it unique, right, is you could start anything you want, but if you don't have like a structure in place and intentionality behind it, it'll kind of just like fall by the wayside. And I mean, we have bylaws, like a group of 4 dudes that live in a total of 3 different states, and like we literally have bylaws to kind of dictate how do we approach
like a year
this.
To get this closer.
Yeah, I mean, there was like real discernment and prayer, and like wrote out this stuff, and we do like a weekly kind of like emotional and life check-in, like how's your marriage, how's your work, how's your life, your money, like how's life. And then every month we try to get on a phone call and do a deeper dive and maybe even like get encouraged by each other. And then this is our first time coming together for our what is going to become an annual retreat in different places around the country.
Not Kansas.
Come on.
They already, but that's in the bylaws. I'm pretty sure that's in the bylaws.
We're not allowed to go there. But I think the last thing I would say that's cool about this, man, is, when we hear the word accountability, we so many times just think about like almost like how to not trip up in more sin or something like that.
Yeah.
And that is important. Like that's vital, but it's more than that. It's about how do we as young men help ourselves to become more emotionally healthy. And I would even say like more emotionally available to each other, to our wives, to our ministry context. And quite frankly, like you almost have to schedule it out to like force yourself to do that sometimes. And we're like, man, like let's just stop pretending like this is easy and it's just going to happen. Like we actually need to like form ourselves into men who are able to like act like this, because I don't want my kids to grow up with the same stuff I did. You know what I mean? Like I want them to know like, oh, my dad's emotionally available.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, and I think that's what's been special about it is kind of what you're saying at the end, where it's almost like it's definitely motivated or at least pushed. I know for myself, like forward, like because my wife knows I'm doing this. Like this is not like a hidden thing from her. Like, and she knows like. It's forced me to be more open and honest with her. Even like if I'm sharing stuff with you guys, there's almost like that gut check of like not sharing your guys' stuff, but sharing my stuff of like, hey, like I've been pretty emotional and open with these guys. How I've been struggling. Could you pray for me in this way, or almost like that next level, like just check between her and I, and even that motivation of like just straight up, like I hadn't seen a counselor for a while, and I was starting to share stuff with you guys, and it was almost that push of like. I gotta get back into it, and like my wife had been saying that, and I had some other. It's like just that motivation, that little piece to like be a better, healthier. I like the word healthier than better, like healthier man, individual, leader, but more than that, husband, father, and all that. So
it's good.
Yeah, and I'd even say that one of the things is like we really don't talk about ministry that much.
If ever.
I mean, which is kind of crazy, just because like this is our lives. This is what we do. Like our lives surround ministry, and so I just think it's interesting because I think that's probably what people think we do. It's like, oh, you just complain about all the things, and it's not like we're legitimately we're trying to do life with one another, and that's the thing that I think is unique is like. like even one of my friends back home in Hayes, I tell him all the time, I was like, I'm just thankful that you don't need me to be your pastor all the time.
Yeah.
Sure.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's what, for us, that's what we are for each other. Because everybody, when we talk to somebody, everybody wants something from us.
Sure.
They want a word, they want encouragement, they need something, whatever, where we actually have community where we know each other, we know what we're going through, and it's not just centered on ministry. And I think it gives us a break from those things. And I think that's unique as well to this group, really.
Yeah.
For sure. And I think it just provides like an avenue of understanding.
Yeah.
Where like I don't have to preface what I'm about to say.
Oh, sure.
Right. Like I can come into it almost like, for the lack of a better term, like unhinged, unfiltered at times of like, yo, this is what I'm feeling. This is what I'm experiencing. This is what's going on. And I don't have to like church it up for the sake of like being accepted. Not that we're just like these reckless, like just crapping on everything, but it's like there's a place where like I can say like I'm struggling with this.
Yeah.
And it not have to like make sure that I'm protecting anything. Like it's just a place I can be honest to myself. But also I think what I love about it, and we don't have to go into the details of it, is it's a place that whenever you come into it with like genuine like struggle or like unhingedness, it's not a place where that goes unchecked.
Yeah.
Right.
Sure.
Like I love that it's a group of dudes that are going to call me to something better. Or to something healthier. And it's like, it's a group of friends that are going to fight with you, for you, and against you if necessary.
Sure.
And I think that that's the key to like the success or the health behind this group is it's a bunch of dudes who don't care how you actually feel, right? They want what's best for you. They want the healthiest thing for you in that space. And so like your feelings don't necessarily apply to the truth that needs to be applied to your life. And I think that's been the part, but you can come into it and be vulnerable and honest and authentic. And I don't feel the need to like hide it or church it up or whatever, like the term you're looking for is, because all of us, like, I mean, like I sit in what we call Fight Club, like our men's Bible study. At the end of the day, like it can be a group of guys that I love and I'm doing life with, but at the end of the day, I'm still a pastor sitting at the table.
Yeah.
And there's something about, and I understand there's people listening to this that you're not a pastor, you're not in ministry, and you're still seeking that accountability.
Yeah.
But it's just something about being with a group of guys that just see you for who you are, not what you do.
Yeah.
And I think that's the beautiful thing about this is all of us are under the understanding that we're sons of the Most High.
Yeah.
And there's a standard for that life. There's a standard for being the husbands, the pastors, the whatever. You insert blank.
Yeah.
And it's a group of guys that are going to fight for that on your behalf if necessary, against you if necessary, and with you. So that's what I love about it.
Yeah. That's so good. For maybe the person listening, when we use the word accountability, like, and I feel like we may have touched on it, but what does that mean? So to you, are you saying that's like someone who's going to fight for you or call you out on your stuff? Like, does that look different in different contexts for people?
I think, we can just shoot the elephant in the room. Anytime somebody hears accountability, they think of sexual sin.
Yeah.
It's somebody that sees my Google search history and it's like, that's not necessarily this group. Like, this is a group of guys that, like, I have laid forth a vision and a standard for what I think God's calling me to in this life. You guys are aware of that. You know what that is, and you're going to hold me accountable to that in the moments where I lose sight.
Yeah.
So I almost think like accountability to me is somebody that can see when you can't.
Yeah.
Right? And so like there are moments where I'm going to lose sight of what I'm actually living for, and I'm going to get stuck in whatever it is, whether it be financial, whether it be a specific sin, whether it be a tension with my spouse, whatever it is, right? Parenting for some of you guys. Like there's going to be those moments where you lose sight of like Hebrews 12 says, fixing our eyes on Jesus. We're going to lose sight of that. And I think it's a group of dudes for me, they're going to point me back to Christ.
Yeah.
Like that at the end of the day, and all of us, like I can say this, I don't want to know what Tre thinks. I want to know what the Christ in Tre thinks.
Yeah.
I think that's the important part and the intentionality behind choosing this group is it's a group of men committed to Christ first.
Yeah.
And so it's like, I can call you out. You can receive that call out because you know it's not Britton.
Yeah.
It's not my flesh, or it's not, you know what I'm saying? Like, I think that's the part of accountability is it's a group of individuals that are committed to Christ first.
Yeah.
Committed to his way, his truth, his life. We're going to hold each other to that.
And I think that's the thing about Christian context, right? Like, in my opinion, like there's so many Christians who are just mean, man. And they're self-righteous. And like, I've had moments of that in my own life that I'm like embarrassed about, but there's something about when you build relational equity with people intentionally, what you're doing is you're saying, I'm allowing you to open up that curtain and to look in. And because I've allowed you into this space and you know what my like North Star is practically, you know what I mean? It's like now you have the ability and I've given you even the authority to say something in my life and for me to hopefully be receptive to it. And even if I'm not receptive to it, I don't get to now just be all butthurt and mad about it because I gave you that permission.
Yeah.
You know, and like at my church, we talk about like our whole purpose of our church is like we want to see the kingdom of God coming into Portland as it is in heaven, right? Insert your context for that phrase. And we're like, we want to be with Jesus, we want to become like him, and we want to go do what he did. That's like the 3 aims. And I've never met somebody, if you genuinely are laying down some of your life to do some of the things that Jesus did, I could care less what your vocation is, your background, anything. If you are attempting to do some of the things Jesus did, you are going to get wary. You're going to realize this ain't all just like, you know, peaches and cream. Like, this is tough, you know? Yeah. And it's like accountability. You're asking that question. I'm like, one, it's invited is a thing. And then I think the next thing is like, we each get to take turn being Moses. And then the other ones get to take turns being like Aaron and her holding up the arms.
So good.
And it's like, yeah, I need somebody to come up next to me and my arms is wobbling and they about to drop, you know? And then it's someone else's turn. Like they're about to have that mountaintop moment. Now I get to be her. You know what I mean? I get to be Aaron. Like I get to help hold up those arms. You know, like that's accountability.
Yeah. I think we've all experienced accountability where it's in a character assault.
Right. Sure. Yeah, that's so good.
You know?
Yes.
Where it's like, it's not I'm disguising this assault on your character as accountability.
Right.
Yeah.
And that's devastating.
Sheesh.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I think there are a lot of people probably listening or watching this podcast that's their only form of accountability they've ever received.
It's a shame.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so the way I heard it explained like this, accountability is not a calling out, it's a calling up.
Mm-hmm.
Sure. Yeah.
You know, so it's not saying, like, what I love about you guys is like whenever I confess stuff or I'm like, I'm just being real and I'm going through it. Y'all know.
Mm-hmm.
Like you could put me on blast and I'm just going through it. And so I think for you guys, like what you've said to me is like, hey, that's not who you are.
That's
like
right.
we were on the phone call yesterday and you're like, no, you know, like that's not who you are. And so that for me, that's what true accountability is. And I think if you look at Jesus when he's walking with the disciples, that's what he did.
Yeah.
You know? And so there wasn't an assault on character. It was like, hey, Peter, that's not who you are.
Yeah.
So good.
And I'm like, one more thing about like, what did Jesus do, right? It's like, how did Jesus even call people forward or how did he invite them into deeper conversation? Because it's like, let's say we all agree on these bylaws, this, that, or the other. Like, that doesn't just mean that like trust is automatic.
Right.
Like, you know what I mean? It's still something that's garnered. It's earned over time.
It is earned.
And it's like, Jesus, like, I don't remember the exact numbers, but it's all good. The basic premise is, if you go through the Gospels, right, like Jesus is asked, I want to say it's like 300-something questions. Jesus, in turn, he asked 180-something questions, and he only directly answers, like, you know, like very explicitly. It's like 3, right? And depending on how some translations, some think it's even a little bit more than that. No matter what you do, it's like less than 10.
Yeah.
And we do the opposite. We directly answer, give these objective, like directive statements 300 times, and I only ask 3 helpful, deep, caring questions. And I'm like, that don't even look like Jesus.
Right.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
No, I think that's huge because at the end of the day, like, all of us know, right? I think that's like, we're adults who are committed to Christ, his word. Like, we know. We just need somebody to be there with us in it.
Yeah.
When we're insane, we need someone to be there with us, committed to say, hey, this is the sane side of this, right? When I think just that aspect of, like you're saying, like, we don't need the like soapbox speech every time somebody fails. Because when you come to the group with like, hey, I failed, right? Hope and I, you know, I'll be the butt of the joke for this one, but it's like, I was impatient, you know, like she came in, she was struggling with something. I was tired. I snapped, shouldn't have. And it's not an instant, and it's not like you guys are putting it to the wayside, right?
Yeah.
But then it's the side phone call after the phone thing of, hey, bro, it's not okay, man.
Yeah.
There's got to be better. What else is going on?
Yeah.
How are you going to go? And so I think that aspect of it, but I think that whole thing, like you're saying, like, it's not, we know. Like, all of us, like, we're adults, you know better. You know the standard that's for your life. And some people don't maybe, but in the context of this group, we do. And so it's not We don't need to stand on this guy while he's down, but rather it's like, man, let's come alongside that person, not affirming the difficulty or the sin maybe necessarily, but saying like, we're here, even though.
Yeah.
And I think that aspect of it is huge.
Yeah, and I think one of the things about like just community in general that we can't do this alone.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And so I think there's a lot of times where we believe the narrative, we believe the lie that we can do this by ourselves.
Yeah.
I remember this moment, it's been probably 5 or 6 years ago, and I was as a part of a group, and we were doing a retreat, and it was out in the mountains. We're doing this retreat, and we just had this powerful night, and there was just a ton of confession of sin and just confession of all this stuff going on, not necessarily just sin, but like, hey, this is where I'm at. And I'll be honest, I do not remember what I talked about, but I just remember being overwhelmed. I hadn't told anybody what was going on, and I'm sitting there and just talking through people, hey, this is what's happening. I just need help. I can't get over this. And I don't even remember what I was talking about, but I do remember this moment where my mentor, he looks me in the eyes and he goes, you know why God put this in your life? Which I don't necessarily, I'm like, I don't know if you should be saying this, but he goes, I believe God put stuff in your life you can't get over yourself, so you need that, you need me. And I think there are a lot of people who are out there struggling by themselves because they don't have the Christian community that they need or whatever. And it might be a you thing, but it also might be a we thing where we need to be a better body of Christ to come alongside of people and things. But I do believe God puts us in situations and circumstances where it's like, hey, you can't do this. You need me. You need God, but you also need other people. And so for me, I don't even remember what was going on. I don't even remember what the situation was, but I remember the fact that he said, hey, like, you need us. And he's like, and that's the body of Christ. And that's the beauty of Christ.
The Trinity is nothing but like a beloved dance of community perpetually, right?
Yeah.
And it's like, if God is over here dancing with himself and like exhibiting community for all time, like, what do I think I can do just trying to be some lone wolf? And quite frankly, I'm a gangster, dog. I could do a lot by myself. You know what I mean?
Right.
But it's like, even me, like my shoulders get shaky. You know what I'm saying? It's like, I have to follow the example of the rabbi in which I've chose to follow. You know what I mean?
No, I think it's huge too, because the thing is too, like, and I said this earlier, but I think this is the key, is none of us are committed to the individual. We're committed to the Christ in the individual. It's like Paul says, imitate me as I imitate Christ. And so it's like the best thing any of us have to offer this group is the Christ in us. It's the Spirit of God flowing through us, communicating on our behalf, being the one that's provoking our thoughts, provoking our actions. Because at the end of the day, if it's just flesh on flesh, this would just be awful. The amount of arrogance, pride, insecurity all at once, all at this table, like, let's just be real, you know what I mean? We'd be a mess. But it's the Christ in it. And I think that's the thing that a lot of people are missing in that accountability and that different stuff is first and foremost key to that community. Just like, because I think I know what you're talking about. That person that's speaking there is, we need the Christ in other people. That was Jesus's idea. That was Jesus's design. That's why the church exists. It's the Christ in other people that's then ministering to each other. I think that's the key.
And honestly, that mentality removes a lot of pressure. Because, you know, I feel like there's been conversations that we've had, and even G and I the other night, like, he's sharing, and my only response could be, bro, that sucks. But like, let me keep listening. Let me be here. Like, and just to ask those next questions of just like, not for any other thing of like, I don't have the answer. But I can be a listening ear. And I think you've also said with accountability, it does go both ways. Like, that's community, that's any of that stuff. And like, I can be all about accountability to you, but if I'm not open to letting you keep me accountable, if I'm not willing to engage as well, then it's not going to do anything as well.
That's the key to success.
You're Jesus to them, though.
You've become the answer.
Yes, exactly.
And instead, you've still kept your walls up, your mask on, you know, fill in the blank, whatever. And I think that's what's been. I think it's taken time, but that's like the beauty of this being something that's not like, let's do it for 6 months and then we'll see how it is, or let's do it. It's like this idea of like, no, we're in it. So buckle up and like, let's start taking those walls down, that mask down, and really begin to have those conversations and be there for each other.
Dude, so here, I don't mean to like commandeer asking questions. This your thing, you know what I'm saying? But I'm like,
I'm gonna
as we're thinking about like who's listening, you know what I mean? Like, they'll be able to relate to some of what we said, not all of it. But as I'm thinking about the listener, it's like if I'm the working mom, you know what I mean, or if I'm the businessman, whatever it is, fill in the blank. It's like, what does this look like for them practically?
Yeah.
How and I specifically want us to talk about like, what does it look like for people to pursue this type of community without the church giving them the place and the space and the time and the leader to do so?
Yeah.
And even on top of that, like, let's say, you know, I think we should talk about like, what does that look like for just everyday people who don't have a life of ministry vocation, right? Which is the most people, thank God. And outside of that, it's like, what about the differences? And like, how do you get over that? Or like, let's just keep it a buck. Like our group, we're going to have some fun stuff to talk about in this next coming season. Like there's an election coming and our country ain't just going to get close.
Right.
You know what I mean? It's like, how do we navigate that?
Yeah.
Like I'm coming from a completely different context where the people who go to my church, I promise you they think differently than the people who go to Bishop's church.
Am I?
Let alone this other one. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so I'm like, it's just, how do people do this practically? And like, and then when the tension come up, when the differences come up, when the fighting happens, how do you navigate that?
Yeah. No, I love that. I'm glad you brought that up. And I think that was my hope, is even like someone who is listening, let's put it out there. Like, what does it look like to do this in your everyday life?
Yeah. I think first and foremost, you just start.
Yeah.
I think so many people are waiting for insert spoon here. This like spoon-fed community of, if there's somebody leading it, then I'll be a part of it. Like if this is something you're hungry for right now, start it.
Yeah.
Like find 2 or 3 of your closest friends.
It doesn't have to be complex.
No, ours isn't. I know like we have bylaws and stuff like that, but that's just because Trey and I know each other. And if we didn't make it serious from the jump, we would have never done it.
Yep.
And so, but I think I would encourage it to be same sex, in my opinion, because I just think there's importance to that. And it's not that we don't think husbands and wives can be in community together, but there's something about being with a group of men or being with a group of women that provide there's a level there. But I think you just start, you do it, and be okay with the fact that it's going to be messy, but do it consistently.
Yeah.
Something else is ours isn't 100% spiritual all the time. You guys, like the guys at this table, know my weight loss goals. You know my financial goals. You know the different things I've put into place in those spaces. So I think there's a holistic view to what true accountability is. And sure, if you want it to just be spiritual, you can do that too. If you just want to go to a CrossFit gym, you can do that too. If you just want to be a part of a Dave Ramsey group or whatever the heck that is, you can do that too. But I think there's something to be said about like, I'm going to give you my whole life.
Yeah.
And it's going to be awkward.
Yeah.
You two literally have never met until last night. And it's like, so I just got to tell this guy about that. And it takes time. And I think we learned that. Like, it's going to take time. It's going to take reps, if you will. But I think for the person listening to this, like, finding a group of men or women that give a crap about you is key. And then just being consistent in that space. And it can look like it doesn't have to be geographically like ours. It doesn't have to be spread out. It can all be in the same hometown, the same church body. But I think you just start and stop making excuses and waiting for somebody else to do something that you're wanting and craving.
It's probably the classic, like, you're hearing this, and there's probably a handful of faces that are appearing in your head.
Oh, for sure.
Of like, oh, I trust that person. Yep. Or I want to do life with that person. It's just like, go for it.
Yeah.
And can I even push a little bit?
Yeah.
And so something that we wrote in our bylaws that I think hasn't necessarily had to come to play a lot yet. But let's say that you do something that's not only your local geographic area. Like, we literally have it written within our group that we can only have a certain amount of people from a certain area. We can only have a certain amount of people of an ethnic background. And like, you don't have to do that, but I think like what I'm trying to say with this is,
we're as wide as we'll ever get.
I mean, honestly though,
until we got to make you figure out which side we're going to use.
Oh, goodness gracious. He'd be making me try to choose which side of me I am. I'm all of it, baby. It's the light skin privilege. But it's like, we're intentionally trying to make sure that we have different perspectives and different backgrounds represented, so we don't become homogenous thinkers who have the exact same blind spots and fall into the exact same holes. Yeah. But I need somebody who think a little differently than me. Now, we need to have some of the same convictions, because I don't want to have to fight about theological stuff every single time.
Yeah.
But we can still have a lot of differences. Me and Bishop, and I'm just using him because we've had the most theological conversations with each other. Honestly, we have differences.
Yeah.
And like, it makes us closer. It doesn't push us apart, and it makes me sharpen where I'm at. And hopefully I'm helping him, even though the brother's brilliant. You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
No, I think that's the key though, is it's not just a bunch of people that agree.
Yeah.
Like I think if you were to sit Trey and I down with just probably all of us actually, if we were to sit down and lay out like a political, like, what do you think? It would probably get messy.
Yes.
But I think the key that it all comes back to is like, we're centered on Christ.
Yeah.
Like he is the leader of our group, as cliche as that may sound. Yeah, I think those things matter.
Yeah. I would just say it's going to be scary.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like it is. Like,
Yeah.
and that's why, like, I think for you, just like, I think just starting, it's great. I always tell young adults, just stepped out of the ministry, but we always have these young adults who come back, like, I can't find an encounter. I'm like, well, start one.
Yeah.
And they're like, whoa. I'm like, listen, sometimes you got to create the community that you want.
Yeah.
I was like, and I think that a lot of times that we're like, kind of like, we're going to wait for somebody else to do this for us. But you've been a part of community. Most people know what a semblance of healthy community is. And it's like this weird cliches, like be the change you want to be in the world. It's like, dude, sometimes you got to do that. Yeah. And I would just say, I remember the first time in my men's group, I confessed my sin in front of our whole men's group. And we did not talk about one verse that entire night because we went around the room and everybody confessed their sin.
Yeah.
And I remember one of the guys came up and he's like, if my pastor can tell me that, then I can tell him.
Yeah.
And I think there's a lot of truth in that we're waiting for somebody else to fully know. Like we want to know them first, fully who they are, and before we let them know fully who we are.
Yeah.
And I always tell people, I'm like, you got to give them ammo.
Mm-hmm.
Like
something they can kill you with.
Yeah. Like if you're not being that bluntly honest, then you really don't actually know who they are. And what you said about trust, now that comes back to trust. Like trust is earned. I think there's a lot of times we put trust in place in misguided trust, and accountability can hurt if it's used against you, but we'll never get to that level of community if we're unwilling to go there ourselves. And so I would just encourage people, like, one, it's going to be scary.
Yeah.
And I think the other thing is you don't like yourself, so you don't think anybody else will.
Yeah.
That hurt, didn't it? Because it hurt me.
And so I think
my heart's pounding a little bit.
So I think that there's some sort of like identity issues that come with accountability because you're like, hey, I don't even really enjoy myself, and this is me. I'm talking,
right?
Like I'm not saying this to anybody else, right. But I'm like, would I hang out with me?
Right.
I don't know.
Yeah, am I too much?
You have all these things, and so but this is what the body of Christ is for. I remember I have this lie that I believe all the time is I never fit in. Like wherever I go, wherever I go, I never fit in. Yeah. And I'm just the weird person and all this stuff. And I remember praying about it the other day and had this thought. It was like, that may be true for the context you've been in, but you've also created a community that has helped other people who never felt like they fit in feel like they fit in. Yeah. And I'm bawling like in my prayer time because I'm like, God, let me continue to be that for other people. Even if I don't believe it for myself, let me facilitate a place where people who don't feel like they fit in, just like me, can come and they can be a part of a community where they feel seen, they feel loved, they feel known, and we can actually do this thing that we call Christianity.
That's good.
Yeah.
Do you feel like within that group, I guess like for our group, we've kind of decided to take turns of like who's kind of, I guess I'd use the word like leading, or kind of like at least leading the charge. Like we chose that as a necessity because I think we've done the bylaws, and because we're trying to make this, we live in different states and some of that. What does that look like in, I think, an everyday context? Like, does there need to be a leader, or is that just the leader is the person who's like, I want to see this through, and so I'm going to be the one that's going to keep it pushing? Like, what does that look like? I
think organically leadership happens at the beginning, but then like with our group, like it started out like Trey and I, or whatever. I don't remember the number. The leaders. I don't remember the specific name. Yeah, something like that. Like we're the ones that are running it now, but literally this week we're voting for next year's who's going to run it. Because after you get longevity,
that's the election he was talking about.
Yeah, it's going to be. We're picking.
That's the only one.
But like, it's that aspect of like we're all doing this together. But I think at the beginning, like whoever's passionate about it, whoever wants to lead it, like don't not lead it because you want to be inclusive.
Yeah,
like if you have that passion and you want to be the one that sees it through, do it.
Yeah, and I think setting the example
Exactly.
too. Like you need somebody on the forefront. You guys both did that for us.
Yeah.
Like you guys, hey, this is what we want. This is what we need. Even with our Monday check-ins, right?
Yeah.
We kind of sucked there for a little bit.
Yeah.
One of you set up, hey, yo, we're not doing this right.
Yep.
You guys were setting the example. So I think there is some sort of like there needs to be that kind of
creating a standard.
that like, hey, and we all know that if we miss too many Monday check-ins, that one of us is going to speak up, right? Because you set that example. So I think there is some time where you need to be able to create that culture. And then when you have that community, it just becomes part of who you are. So I think the natural leadership will dissipate. Like I think our leader for our group is mostly going to be like a manager.
Yeah.
Right.
You know?
Yeah.
And so you manage times, you manage, hey, this is what we're doing, you manage all these things. And so that's what I think organically, if you have a culture of like, hey, we're all on the same level, we're just trying to do this together, where it kind of naturally goes that direction, where at the forefront you're setting that example, you're putting in culture. That's when I stepped into leadership, all I talked about was culture, everything we're doing. And now, like when I left, literally I really didn't have to even talk about culture.
Yeah.
Because it was just who it was. And I think that will happen if you try to set the example well.
For sure. And I think too, like if God gave you the vision, don't wait for somebody else to take it.
Yeah.
Like if you have that, like run with it, build it, trust the Lord with it. And then as it goes, like, and people are catching and taking hold of that vision, like give away ownership.
Yeah.
And as you give away ownership, watch it go so much bigger than you actually could ever dream or imagine it to be.
That's awesome.
And so I think that was kind of like, I think we're at capacity for where I can lead us, but now we've got other guys that can lead it. And so, but I think that aspect of it of like, there was a vision, there was a passion. It's like, let's do it. And then, but like, just like G said, now it's just like, all right, now you're already doing it. So keep doing it.
Yeah.
But it doesn't, necessarily, leadership wise, I don't think we have a leader. It's just whoever decides where we're going that year. And Garrett's in charge this week because he's in charge of what we eat. So that's ultimately, that's the leader of our group is who's in charge of meals.
That's the most pure form of leadership.
Right.
And I just because I just want to make sure we did hit on it clearly, because I know I value clarity and I think clarity is kindness. But when the hard stuff comes up, we didn't necessarily like hit it on its head.
Right.
Yeah. But I've heard multiple things where we've answered that question, but not so explicitly. And I would just say, like, keep it real simple. It's like Matthew 5 and Matthew 18. If there's an issue, go to the person, and don't Facebook message them. Don't hide behind a screen. I mean, if you can get physically proximate, but it's just like, if Andrew's not doing his Monday check-in, it's like, I'm going to say, Andrew, where is your Monday check-in?
Yeah.
Right.
You know, or if I keep coming week after week with the exact same sin, my hope is that by name, you guys will be like, hey, Trey, there's no change in the pattern, dog. This isn't just something you can come cry, like, woe is me to anymore, you know? And so I think, you know, where I'm from, it's just like, man, call it a spade,
Mm-hmm.
and hit it on its head. And the quickest way through conflict, you know what, I actually learned this from Brother Bishop was he likes
Brother Bishop.
Yeah, you know, he has this buffalo tattoo that he refuses to get finished. but this
Talk about
thing,
accountability.
I'm telling you, but this thing that he taught me about buffaloes was cool. You know, he grew up in some context where he thought about this more than me. I'm from the city, but
see you.
Watch out now. Oh, I guess prime time. Okay, but oh my goodness gracious, we're derailed. We're almost there, Bayview. All right, but this is what I'm trying to say. Buffaloes do this thing when they're in a herd where when there's a big storm coming, they do not run away from the storm. They don't even stand still and get into like a little cluster to protect each other. What they do is collectively as a unit, they turn towards the storm and then they charge directly into it, because the fastest way through a storm is to turn and set your eyes towards it and to face it head on and not to be distracted from it or to run away from it or to let it buffet you on the side. And quite frankly, when I'm thinking about the armor of God, I ain't really got nothing protecting my back, but I do got something protecting my front. So it's like, I got to go into it. You know what I mean? And it's like, that's what it looks like when it gets hard, is I think we have a culture that praises cowardice. And to not be a coward is what the call is for men and women who follow Jesus Christ. The most brave thing you could do is to go up to somebody and love them enough to actually say, you did this and it rubbed me the wrong way.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, that's what it looks like to overcome the hard stuff.
Yeah.
That's good.
Yeah, we had some conflict arise recently, and I remember like they were like, I'm gonna wait till they reach out to me. And I looked at him, I was like, you know what Scripture says? It's like, as it is upon you, be at peace with all people. And they're like, and I was like, it doesn't say as it is upon them,
Right.
it's upon you.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So you have to take ownership of those things sometimes where we want to blame and sit on the sidelines, but that's just not what we're called to do.
Yeah. So good. Well, awesome. Well, I appreciate you guys.
There's any tattoo artists out there that want to finish my
let's
tattoo.
finish Britt's tat. But I don't know. Any final thoughts just on what this all looks like? And
I mean, we're still figuring it out.
Yeah.
So I think that's the aspect of it. It's just like, it's not going to be a perfect process ever. Community's messy, relationships messy. That's why none of us like it. This is going to be messy. This is going to have times where it doesn't go very well. There's going to be times where it's awesome.
Yeah.
But don't quit. Don't be soft, and do what Jesus has called you to, which is a living community with one another.
Yeah.
And so, yeah. But I think that aspect of like, don't go into it with the expectation of like, this is going to be perfect or this is going to fix anything.
Sure.
Because the reality of it is, like, none of our lives got easier because we had somebody to talk to it about.
Yeah.
Right? We just had somewhere to take that and not carry it on our own. And I think that's the key.
Yeah. G, anything?
I mean, Bishop's, he's just dropping dimes over here. So, yeah. I mean, I'm just thankful for you guys. I'm thankful. I've told you guys this before. I'm just thankful to be a part of something like this just because this is what I need. I needed this.
Yeah, buddy.
And I honestly don't think that I could get through what I'm going through without y'all.
Yeah.
And so, for me, I'm just thankful for opportunity. And that's for the people who are listening. I really believe that there's stuff you are going to go through that you can't get through without each other.
Yeah.
And still have your hope and faith in Jesus. And so that's really what we're doing, right? We're all saying, hey, let's fix our eyes on Jesus together as we go through the storms of life. So,
Tre?
Honestly, y'all, I ain't got nothing to add, man. It would just be fluff at this point. So we've said it.
No, so good.
I think all three of you should get buffalo tattoos this week, but you can't get them finished.
because we're unfinished.
Oh, goodness gracious.
You just gave me a reason to never say it.
No.
Thank you.
Accountability would say, this is stupid. Y'all need to stop.
All right. So to wrap up.
Tre has embarrassing tattoos too.
Hey,
Bye, Bayview.
to finish this, community's worth it. You need people. It's just do it. I think was something a good takeaway. And honestly, I turn and face the storm.
Yeah.
And I think that's easier said than done for those Buffalo when they know they got people next to them. And I think for the fact that like this life is not meant to be alone whatsoever. And even so, for the person listening, even if that's just one person that you can kind of connect with, that you're willing to start taking those steps to be deeper and closer with. I hope this encourages you. I hope this is that motivation you needed to find that, because community is possible no matter the circumstances, I believe. And I think we all believe that. And so I appreciate you guys. I love you dudes. And maybe you can find us each week here on any platform where you can find a podcast. And we love you guys.